Okay team, this is it. The battle for Stromgarde Keep. We're gonna win this for the Horde, but it's gonna take all of our cunning and teamwork to make it happen. Garnath, you and Kaz, secure the mine.
Yeah, the mine's like really important because of the ore and stuff.
Yeah, Khadgar, you capture the Newstead. We need those mounted troops if we're gonna launch a proper offensive.
Knowledge is power.
That's the spirit. Daz and Insync, take the Circle of Elements no matter what. We need access to those shamans. Without casters, the attack is over before it's even begun.
Evitel, where do you need me?
Taliesin?
Yes, sir.
You're on log duty.
Yes, sir. Oh, wait a minute. I thought you said log duty?
That's right. We need you to go and pick up all the logs.
Is that even a thing?
Yeah, we need the wood for building badass things like a fortress.
Yeah, but I mean, don't we have like peons for that? Oh my god, wait, am I a peon?
No, of course not. You're not a peon. You're a vital part of the war effort. We're counting on you for your log collecting skills.
Okay, fine. So what, I've just got to go and chop down some trees, do I?
Oh, no need to chop them down. We've got peons for that. Just pick up the logs.
What are you going to be doing while I'm picking up all of the logs?
Besieging the walls of Stromgarde and defeating Danath Trollbane in single combat.
Right. Well, I'll just go and get the logs then, I suppose. Good luck in your
Taliesin? Okay everyone, Taliesin appears to be lagging, so there'll be no one on log duty. Honestly, I think we'll be fine. For the Horde!
There is much to be done.
And here we are, another week where Battle for Azeroth comes just that little bit closer into view as more and more stuff goes onto the alpha. And be warned, internet, because this is going to be one of those very alpha-centric episodes of the weekly reset. But you can't really blame us. In the last 7 days, we've been able to test Warfronts, one of the major new features of the expansion. We've had 4 new dungeons to try out. Dark Iron Dwarves and Mugheart Orcs are now playable. There have been more new models to perv over than in Games Workshop store. And if you're into spoilers, there's even been some pretty fascinating lore reveals too. And we will talk about all of these things, every single one of them, just so you see if we don't. And we're going to start with those dungeons, because there are 4 of them, just like the Beatles. And just like the Beatles, 2 are Horde and 2 are Alliance. Although obviously that's just the case when leveling. At 120 you get access to all of the dungeons, just like the Beatles. I'm going to leave that analogy there, I think. On the Horde side, we have the Underrot and the Temple of Sethraliss. Out of the whole bunch, the Underrot is the strangest. It has the players making their way to an abandoned Titan facility through areas that are full of blood trolls and spores and blood ticks and abominations, which sounds like it should be really colourful, doesn't it? Kind of like Nazmir itself. But the entire thing is a strange, washed out grey-white, to the extent that sometimes I had to check my settings just to make sure something weird hadn't happened and force the terrain to lose all saturation. Alpha. But no, it's meant to be like that. It's like if Darkheart Thicket had all of the colour drained out of it, or sucked out of it by a oh, I see what's going on. And it's really cool and spooky, but it is really grey. Like, there's none more grey. Right up until we get to the more familiar, warm, rich colours of the remains of the Titan facility itself for the final encounter. It's a really short and straightforward dungeon, a bit like Darkheart Thicket actually, which is something I quite like about it really. Unlike the Temple of Sethraliss, which has more of a kind of a Notharian's lair type feel about it, mostly just because there are big fossilised bones everywhere, to be honest. And this dungeon is all about our favourite, are they cool, are they ridiculous, no one can quite make up their mind, snake people, the Sethrak, and their lower, Sethraliss. This is her temple, and we're supposed to have a quick look around to find out why she's taking so long to be reborn, and it's because, surprise, this place is full of snake things who are up to no good. Sneaky snake things. There are little-sized snakes, people-sized snakes, and an elephant-sized snake, and pretty much everything in between, but there's also weird elemental things, glowing electric type things, and a penultimate room, which is pretty much exactly like that horrendous hall in Blackrock Depths where you had to light the pyres amid waves of constantly spawning dwarves. You remember that piece of shit room? Yeah, well now instead of dwarves, imagine they are snake people, and instead of lightning pyres, you're carrying these 2 orbs to put in the eyes of a skull so it'll let you pass. Oh, and now imagine that it's the first time you've ever seen this room, so you have no idea what to do. Oh, and now imagine that it's the alpha, so it's bugged, so even when you think you work out what to do, it won't let you, so you try putting those orbs everywhere, and obviously that doesn't work, and then seriously, 12 minutes later, it does let you do it right, and basically screw this room, GG. Okay, in fairness, there's a neat little mechanic in here. The orb slows down whoever is carrying it, and the snakes can steal it off you. Sneaky snakes. But you can also throw it between members of your group, which is going to make this a fun moment in Mythic Plus. It'll probably take take a well-drilled team just seconds of nifty passing rather than, 12 long minutes. And then the final boss is quite odd too. It's the avatar of Sethraliss herself, and you basically have to heal her up to full health. Is it possible we're going to see Mythic Plus teams playing classes that can all quickly swap into a healing spec for this last bit? That could be really interesting. I really like this dungeon, I thought it was cool, but head and shoulders above either of these two Horde instances are the two Alliance 5-mans, Shrine of the Storm and Waycrest Manor. Shrine takes place in and around that huge carved tentacle monster mountain in Stormsong Valley where we take on the Kultiran Storm Priests, and I love this because this is where it really felt like we were taking some serious names, Apart from the really cool water aesthetic that all the priests have in their abilities and attacks and player transportation, there is some serious old god tentacle stuff going on in Shrine of the Storm. We're talking people with tentacle faces summoning elementals with tentacle faces, or just big old tentacles, because why not? Floaty tentacle sacks, Ashara makes an appearance, and the final boss, who's a faceless one with tentacles for arms, obviously, has a really cool mechanic where he spawns some ads and you have to kill them before your breath bar runs out and you drown on dry land. Also, you get to him by swimming through some caverns, which is pretty standard. Even if these electric jellyfish things you have to avoid give me unsettling flashbacks to the water level of the old Turtles game on the NES. Are you ready for something really cool? Okay, possible spoiler or whatever, because in that cavern, if you keep swimming down, there's some pretty big tentacles down there. As in huge, building-sized tentacles that you will die if you get too close to. Ladies and gentlemen, is this our first stolen glimpse of something bigger than any of this? Is this N'Zoth? I mean, it is, isn't it? I am right, aren't I? Am I right? I think I'm right. I mean, sure, these could just be carved tentacles from the big carved tentacle cliff, and okay, they do look a bit stoned now I think about it, but back off, okay? I'm going to be really excited about this. My favourite of the whole lot, though, is Waycrest Manor, a spooky haunted house which seems to be genuinely based on the opening parts of the first Resident Evil game. Like, it's the same layout, and it does cool Resident Evil things, like having baddies right behind doors as you open them who start instantly attacking you. It's really cool, the route through it is different every time, and this dungeon has by far the most interesting bosses too. There's a trio of witches, there's a fight with a giant wicker thing in a thunderstorm, there's the terrifying pig man, who sits amongst the rotting remains of all the things he's eaten and sends waves of pigs and men to fight you. So he's a pig man, if you see what I mean? And then you make your way down to the basement and fight Lord and Lady Waycrest, and it's just really cool. The whole thing just feels like an old horror movie in the way it's set up and in its tone. My hat really goes off to the team on this one. Now this means we've only got 2 more opening dungeons to test. King's Rest, the crypt of ancient Zandalari rulers, and the Siege of Boralus, which really feels like it's going to be something special indeed. In fact, if you're the kind of person that likes to go exploring around Boralus every time there's a new alpha build, and I am, then you might just see some Horde infiltrators already starting to attack. Do you remember that essay video we did a few weeks back about how the whole face of the Kultiran capital could change in-game in real time? Yeah, you might want to go back and give that another watch.
Oh hey, do you like Dark Iron Dwarves? You do? Well, we've got some great news for you. Dark Iron Dwarves are now playable on the alpha. And the best thing of all, the questline to unlock them hasn't been added yet, so you can just jump straight in and get started with those sick customizations. And yeah, you've got your glowing beards. They're not on fire, but they're smoldering, so I really want to call them tinder beards, but I get that could be confusing. And that's all well and good for me, but the absolute best thing about Dark Iron Dwarves is that for the first time ever, female dwarves are now clearly one of the coolest character options in the game, because seriously, look at this stuff. Look at these hairstyles. These hairstyles are so edgelord, they make void elves look like Disney princesses. And if that's not badass enough for you, why not just go full bald? Yeah, we're going full bald, no question. Look at this cool nose ring option, and these super intense face tattoos that you'll never use because, come on, the Furiosa one is the only tattoo that counts, right? Okay, so yeah, basically you can just be Furiosa. So get ready for a heap ton of stout Scottish Furiosas and Battle for Azeroth. You've been warned. Oh hey, do you like Mag'har orcs? Mag'har, it means like uncorrupted. Do you like brown orcs? You do? Well, we've got some great news for you. Brown orcs are now playable on the alpha. You can go and create one right now. And it doesn't have to be brown either, because Mag'har orcs have an absolutely huge amount of skin color options, covering all the main tribes from Draenor. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, if I can be any one of the orc tribes, why can't we have these sort of options for all the troll tribes? Or like, seriously, the one other dwarf tribe? But after that, you're thinking, that's great, Evitel, but can I make an orc that looks exactly like Grom Hellscream? And the answer is yes, because there's a whole heap ton of new hairstyles too, including the classic Grom. Oh, and of course the straight back option too. I know I'm probably a bit more excited by this than is really appropriate, but I think that these orcs and Dark Iron Dwarves, they just feel especially iconic to me. They make me really happy. Oh, and speaking of Grom, it looks like he's set to make a return in Battle for Azeroth. And that's a statement that could probably do with some qualification. When I say Grom, I'm not talking about our Grom, Green Grom, dad of Garrosh Grom, dead Grom. I'm talking, of course, of the alternate universe Grom. Brown Grom, baddie in Warlords of Draenor, who we rescued, and for some reason the very act of us rescuing also redeemed him of all the war crimes and genocide that he'd committed in the expansion up to that point, Grom. It's no real surprise that we're going to bump into this Grom again, seeing as we have to head to Draenor to recruit the Magar Orcs into the Horde at the beginning of Battle for Azeroth, but it is interesting that Blizzard have given him a new updated model, especially for the occasion, with grey hair. It's been 2 years since we saw him last, and in that time he's become just the latest in the long line of Warcraft Silver Foxes, which I quite like. I hope that this new model doesn't mean he's set to play too big a role next expansion though. Not that I don't like Grom. Grom is great, apart from the war crimes and genocide obviously. It's just because there's only room for one Grom in BFA, and that's my Grom that I just made, so back off, Grey Grom. You're not my real Grom. And if Hellscream is starting to show his age, Blood Elves are getting a facelift. On the alpha right now, Blood Elf males have got new faces, slightly higher res than they were previously, with reworked mouths that finally get rid of the pouty belf duck face. I'm not sure how I feel about this one, to be honest. Is a Blood Elf even a Blood Elf without the pout? We got our first look at the cloth and plate Uldir raid armor sets this week too. Don't forget that in Battle for Azeroth, Blizz are moving away from class-specific armor sets, which means this is half of all the Uldir looks right here. Oh, and look, they've both got face masks on them. All those Worgen and Tauren players are gonna love how that looks on them. The cloth one in particular is great, but one cloth set and one plate set is never gonna be as exciting as 3 cloth sets and 3 plate sets, is it? And this is just less variety in raid armor than we're used to, so understandably some of the community are a little disappointed. But it's not like BFA is lacking in armor set variety. For proof, look no further than the Warfronts armor. This is where most of the designers who usually work on class sets have been assigned. This is 3 different mail sets with 3 recolors each, and this is just for the Horde. That's a huge array of designs. You'll just be getting them from a different place than you're used to. And I mean, that is a lot of Warfront armor to collect. How much of Warfronts are they expecting us to actually play? More on that in a moment. But it's not all models and dungeons on the alpha this week. And be warned, because we're straying into pre-patch spoiler territory here, there's also the first few quests in the Burning of Teldrassil scenario to experience too. Okay, here's the thing. It really is just the first quests, and your progress through the chain stops short of Teldrassil actually going up in flames, so you know what? We're not even going to go into it properly here. There's already plenty to be discussing this week. Let's put Teldrassil on the back burner until such time as there's something really worth talking about. Likewise, the little snippets of in-game cutscenes that have been appearing in the Lordaeron scenarios and Jaina's pretty dramatic return to Borealis at the beginning of the Kultira storyline. These aren't finished yet either, but they do show Anduin single-handedly destroying an Azerite war machine, and Sylvanas raising dead Horde and Alliance troops on the battlefield to fight for her. Of course, all this is super exciting, and we will be talking about them, and in detail, and I dare say with some shit shows here and there too, because seriously boys, she raises Horde and Alliance corpses to fight for her, but I think it's worth waiting until they are a bit more complete.
We had the chance to test Warfronts on Tuesday night, and this was actually a really big deal because they are one of the new flagship features of the entire expansion. Say what you like about Mythic Plus or World Quests or Artifact Power, but those were Legion ideas so impactful and so effective, and overall I think it's fair to say so popular that they have become part of the very fabric of the game for the foreseeable future. Will the same be said about Warfronts? This was our first chance to find out, and there was no shortage of people willing to give them a try either. And I don't know if the sheer volume of people trying to get into Warfronts was more than Blizzard were expecting, or if they were just having completely unrelated problems their end, but whatever was going on, the servers were a lot less interested in Warfronts than the players were, put it that way. To say there was a bit of lag would be a bit like saying that Season 2 of True Detective wasn't quite as good as the original. This was Lagfronts, the battle for Lagguard Keep, and the wait, I know, I've got one. Just next to the Eastern Plague Lands, am I right? So yeah, Alpha. It did get better as the test went on, and towards the end it was actually pretty playable. So from this very early first impression, what can we say about Warfronts? What are they? Well, they are, as a spectacle, really, really impressive. There's up to 20 players taking part, all on the same side, of course, because these are completely PvE scenarios, don't forget. But there's an entire enemy army in front of you, separated out over strategic hubs and ultimately Stromgarde itself. And yet the idea is that it's a bit like an RTS. Gathering resources and using them to create different buildings in your own base will infer different bonuses upon the group, the most fundamental of which is the barracks, which will produce AI troops that will fight on your side to even up the numbers. Blizzard have said that they want it to feel a bit like Warcraft 3, except with the players being the equivalent of the hero character. Well, I suppose that should be all 20 of the players. Well, for one, I don't quite buy that I'm Arthas in this scenario, because I don't remember ever sending Arthas off to chop down trees or mine iron, which are both jobs that at least some of your teammates are going to have to do if you want to build those all-important barracks, armory, forts and whatever. And those first forays out of your base to capture the mine and the lumber mill are really exciting. But is someone going to have to stay at the mine farming those nodes all game? One thing's for certain, literally none of my characters are going to take mining as a profession in BFA, because if that is a job that needs doing, it's not going to be my job. There is something undeniably epic about Warfronts though. That mine doesn't just need to be stripped, for example, it's going to need to be defended too, as the opposing army send waves of forces to attack it. Likewise with your homestead and any of the points that you take. If you don't stay on top of things, and it's really easy not to stay on top of things when half your group is left because the game has already lasted like an hour and a half, that creep of enemy attacks can overwhelm you, just like in an RTS. It's also really fun to capture points and use them as staging posts, and just like an RTS, the real fun comes towards the end when your forces are large and powerful enough to bulldoze what's in front of them. I mean, at times, and especially towards the end as you make your approach on Stromgarde, it does feel like a military operation. It feels like a huge battle. It's pretty great, actually. And I finished my session, well, tired because it was very late at night, but also happy that they were so much fun and really excited to try them again properly in a non-laggy condition. But also with some annoying Taliesin type questions nagging away in the back of my head. Because I've had one singular doubt about Warfronts ever since they were announced, and it's a doubt that hasn't quite left me after this test. And it's that Warfronts are a bit like Garrison Invasions, aren't they? And yes, I know they're like 100 times more epic than Garrison Invasions, and there is much more to them, and that's absolutely true, but they still do seem similar to me in a couple of key ways. I really enjoyed Garrison Invasions in WoD when I first did them. They felt epic and exciting, and I did about 3 of them with guildies, and they were great, and then I had no desire to ever do them again. And I guess this is the main question. Who are Warfronts for? And please understand, this is not a criticism, it's a genuine question, because everyone is going to try Warfronts, and I would predict that most people are going to have a lot of fun. But how much depth is there to them? There's only one difficulty level, and so it has to be winnable in a random group with minimal coordination, and if that's the case, why would friends or guilds run them together? And what extra satisfaction would they get? If you don't need great teamwork and coordination and tactics to win, where is the satisfaction in having those things? Because look, as an example, a full Mythic guild can go into an LFR raid and they can take it as seriously as they would a Mythic raid. They can apply all their stats and communication and coordination, and they will defeat the bosses a lot quicker and more easily than an LFR group would. But that's ultimately never going to be very satisfying to the Mythic raiders because they didn't need to be that coordinated. They didn't need to communicate that much or be that clever. So how does that group enjoy Warfronts? And from the very limited time I've spent in them, I don't think I've seen an answer to those questions yet. But again, please understand, I really want there to be good answers for them because Warfronts deserve them. It's a fascinating idea which could be wonderful, especially in this expansion. So show me, Blizz. Why am I going to come back to them? Why am I going to want to win in a better way again and again? How can people enjoy them at a high level of play as well as a casual one? And no, because loads of cool armor sets though is a decent answer in the short term, but it's not the best answer, is it? Oh, I'm surprised we actually got through all that this week.
I know.
There was so much stuff in that last alpha build. It was like a avalanche, a cacophony of just
bleh.
out like that. And I'm really, really glad it came out like early on Friday rather than late on Friday.
Yeah.
So Blizz, thank you.
Thanks,
because that would have been really difficult. I dare say there's still stuff coming out now even as we're making this episode. So keep up to date with that. And I guess that's going to be the case now, isn't it?
It's just going to be like that until BFA launches.
Yeah, it's really weird because there's so much stuff happening. And what's noticeable is how kind of final stuff like the Lordaeron scenario is feeling, and those cinematics are getting put in there, and yeah, some of them don't have sound and stuff, but they're starting to feel like they're really coming together, which is cool. Feels like they might even make it on time.
Who knows? And that's the thing, because you get your first like tantalizing glimpses of mounts and bits and bobs and patches of grass, and you're like, oh my god, and then you're like, oh, there are millions of these to come.
Yeah,
it's going to create a hopefully a complete game.
But was there anything else you wanted to talk about in this episode?
R.I.P. Ben Brode. I mean, not R.I.P. But
You can't say that because people will think he's died.
No, but like people know what I'm talking about. Ben Brode is leaving Hearthstone.
Well, they might not know what you're talking about because this is a World of Warcraft show, and
but
so maybe people are like, what is this? Hearthstone.
Hearthstone.
Maybe now he's left Blizzard, we can get him for our birthday party.
Hey.
Which is now-ish sort of thing. It's our birthday. Now, I didn't even check this after last week, but I think it's the 25th.
I think it's the 25th too.
25th of April.
So we're not quite there yet.
Will be the 2-year anniversary of our first video being published on this channel. 2 years.
How do you feel about that video?
Old. I feel so old. Oh, looking back at that video.
Yeah.
Oh, it feels terrible. Thank you for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make these videos happen.
And if you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. And remember, my name's Flavorful Feral.
That sounded really good in your mouth.
Yeah.
Say it again.
I thought the same thing.
You sounded so good.
Did that pause was because I was just savoring it in my mouth.
Say it again.
Flavorful Feral.
Flavorful Feral. If you ever want to sell your name, we're kind of done with ours. It's been 2 years. We're bored of it.
Yeah, seriously.
Say it again.
Flavorful Feral.
No, my name is Taliesin.
And I'm Evitel.
And from the both of us, until next time, cheerio.